Throughout human history, certain individuals rise above the tide of their time, not as symbols of peace or progress, but as storms that upend the existing order. Tamerlane, Genghis Khan, and Hulagu Khan were three such figures. Warlords of unmatched ruthlessness and ambition, they didn't just conquer territories, they shattered civilizations, dismantled religious orders, burned cities to the ground, and altered the destiny of continents. Connected by blood, culture, and legacy, these men cast long shadows over medieval Asia, the Middle East, and parts of Europe. Understanding them requires more than recounting their military campaigns. It requires entering a world in which life was fragile, power was everything, and survival demanded brutality. These were not mere rulers or generals, they were empire makers and empire breakers, whose swords were as transformative as they were deadly. The rise of Genghis Khan, the storm from the steppes. Born in 1162 as Temujin on the unforgiving Mongolian steppes, Genghis Khan's early life was marred by hardship. After his father's assassination, his family was abandoned by their tribe, left to starve in the wilderness. Temujin grew up scavenging for food, living without status, security, or protection. But the trials of his youth hardened him. He learned to trust few, forge strategic alliances, and fight with a desperation born from poverty. By the turn of the 13th century, Temujin had begun uniting the disparate and often warring Mongol clans. His rise wasn't just military, it was political, social, and spiritual. He redefined Mongol identity, transforming tribal feuds into a single national vision under his iron will. In 1206, he was proclaimed Genghis Khan, universal ruler, and what followed was nothing less than a storm that would reshape Eurasia. His army was disciplined, mobile, and revolutionary in its use of tactics. Genghis utilized an early form of meritocracy, promoting warriors based on ability rather than birthright. He implemented sophisticated communication systems across vast distances and used psychological warfare, spreading fear and exaggerated tales of cruelty to compel surrender without battle. From the Jin dynasty in China to the Khwarezmian Empire in Persia, his armies burned through civilizations with terrifying speed. Cities like Bukhara and Urgench were depopulated, sometimes entirely destroyed. One Persian chronicler wrote, "They came, they sapped, they burned, they slew, and they vanished." Despite the carnage, the Mongol Empire also laid the groundwork for one of the most significant periods of intercontinental exchange in human history. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, he was buried in a secret unmarked grave. But he had planted the seeds of an empire that would be divided among his sons and expanded by his grandsons. One of them, Hulagu Khan, would direct that Mongol power into the heart of the Islamic world. Hulagu Khan, the wrath of the Mongols on the Islamic world. Hulagu Khan was born in 1217 to Tolui, Genghis Khan's youngest son. Raised in the traditions of Mongol martial culture and imperial destiny, Hulagu would become one of the most feared names in Islamic history. His campaigns would shatter what remained of the classical Islamic Golden Age and leave behind a scar that still resonates in the collective memory of the Muslim world. In 1255, Hulagu was sent west by his brother, Mongol Khan, with orders to expand Mongol rule over the Islamic states of the Middle East. His targets included the remaining Nizari Ismailis, the Assassins, the Abbasid Caliphate, and eventually the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. The most devastating moment came in 1258, when Hulagu arrived at the gates of Baghdad. At that time, Baghdad was not merely a city, It was the intellectual, cultural and spiritual capital of the Muslim world. The Abbasid Caliphate, though weakened politically, still symbolized unity and authority in Islam. Its libraries were filled with centuries of accumulated knowledge. Its institutions were centers of medicine, astronomy and philosophy. Hulagu demanded surrender. The Caliph al-Mustasim, believing the city's prestige would protect it, refused. The result was catastrophe. The Mongols laid siege, breached the walls, and unleashed days of slaughter. According to chroniclers, the streets ran with blood, and so many books were thrown into the Tigris River that the waters turned black with ink and red with blood. The House of Wisdom, the greatest library of the Islamic world, was destroyed. The Caliph himself was killed, reportedly trampled to death in a carpet to avoid shedding royal blood. This was more than the fall of a city. It was the symbolic collapse of Islamic authority. The psychological impact was profound. Baghdad, which had once rivaled Athens and Rome in intellectual brilliance, was reduced to a shell of its former self. After Baghdad, Hulagu's forces swept into Syria, but at Ain Jalut in 1260, the Mamluks of Egypt finally checked Mongol expansion. Still, Hulagu had carved out the Ilkhanate, a Mongol-controlled Persian empire that would last for decades and leave a lasting cultural mark on Iran. Hulagu's campaigns marked a turning point. The Mongols were no longer just conquerors of the steppe. They had become rulers of empires with deep urban, religious and political traditions. The damage inflicted was irreparable, but it paved the way for new powers to rise, including the Ottomans and Safavids, who would later reshape the scourge of East and West. Roughly a century later, another warrior emerged from Central Asia. Born in 1336 in the region around modern-day Uzbekistan, Timur, later known in the West as Tamerlane, would become the last of the great nomadic conquerors. Though he claimed descent from Genghis Khan through marriage, Timur was ethnically Turkic and culturally Islamic. But like his ancestors, by ambition, he was a man of unstoppable will, calculated terror, and imperial vision. From the beginning, Timur combined cunning diplomacy with ferocious violence. He played local leaders against one another, amassing power slowly, before launching an unprecedented series of campaigns that stretched from India to Anatolia. In 1398, he invaded northern India and attacked Delhi, then under the rule of the Delhi Sultanate. The city, once a hub of Islamic and Hindu culture, was reduced to rubble. Eyewitnesses described rivers choked with corpses and entire neighbourhoods wiped out. Timur boasted of building towers of human skulls, a symbol of his cold, calculated use of terror to break enemy morale. Timur's military genius was indisputable. He crushed the mighty Ottoman army at the Battle of Ankara in 1402, capturing Sultan Bayezid I. This defeat plunged the Ottoman Empire into a temporary crisis, delaying its conquest of Constantinople by half a century. But Timur's campaigns were also self-defeating. His focus was not on governance or state building, but on legacy and destruction. Cities like Aleppo, Baghdad and Isfahan faced horrendous massacres under his rule. Even as he claimed to defend Islam, he killed countless Muslims. Yet, Timur was a paradox. Despite the bloodshed, he saw himself as a restorer of culture and civilization. He poured immense wealth into rebuilding Samarkand, turning it into a glittering jewel of architecture, science, and art. He supported scholars, astronomers, and artists, all while devastating the very cities those scholars had once called home. Timur died in 1405 on his way to invade China, a campaign that might have changed East Asia forever had it been realised. His death left his empire in disarray, but his legend endured in both horror and admiration. The legacy of three warlords. Taken together, Genghis Khan, Hulagu Khan and Tamerlane represent not just a trio of conquerors, but a seismic force that reshaped the medieval world. They embodied the contradictions of empire, savage yet visionary, brutal yet transformative. Their invasions destroyed libraries, but also sparked the movement of ideas. They wiped out cities, yet fostered the birth. Trade routes shifted, political boundaries redrew, and the global balance of power was forever altered. The aftershocks of their actions can still be felt today, in the ruins they left behind, in the rise of new centres of power, and in the collective memory of peoples across 3 continents. A question for the ages. Were these men purely destroyers, or were they engines of historical change? Could the European Renaissance have accelerated without the Mongol conquests opening up new trade routes and redistributing knowledge from east to west? Would the Middle East have remained unified had Baghdad not fallen? Did Timur delay the Ottoman conquest of Europe just long enough for the continent to industrialise? These are questions historians continue to debate. Perhaps there are no easy answers. Perhaps that is the nature of power. It creates and destroys simultaneously. But one thing is certain: the names of Genghis Khan, Hulagu Khan, and Tamerlane will echo in history for as long as empires rise and